For those of you just coming to this place for the first time, Stargrind is an organization that aim to do monthly interviews with local successful entrepreneurs in order to form a startup community to help with getting inspired and connected. So originally our plan for this month is we're getting Tim and Nick from the Elevator Life. They're doing a company that's helping foreigners to build companies in China and about wines too. But something happened to their transportation. I think something involved with elevator or something. So they're not going to make it. So I see Joe over there. I asked him what he's doing. He said he's doing PE. I said, okay, great, let's do you instead. So this is what's happening for this time. We also got Paul here. Paul is he's actually the guest for our first startup right here in Shenzhen. He's a serious entrepreneur. He's doing more business than I can count with my fingers. So he's gonna co-hosting with this event too. So let's get started. So Joe, how's your day?
Not bad.
Okay, let's get started with your job. What exactly are you doing?
Okay, so I work for a small private equity and venture capital fund in China. So my focus right now is on sourcing deals primarily abroad. This is in North America, Europe, and other developed markets. So right now I'm focused on technology, the high technology space. So this would be disruptive technologies and specifically devices. For example, it would be electronic devices and other types of high technology in the business-to-business sector. Also in medical devices is a pretty big focus of mine personally. So the main reason that this is our focus is, I'm sure as a lot of you know, bringing any type of technology to China is a problem in case the Chinese will just copy it or reverse engineer it. So we only look at technologies that are very, very difficult to copy. Right? A lot of companies, they have patents in America or they have IP protection, but that's not going to help them in China all the time. So the technologies we look at are very, very strong core technologies, and they would need at least 5 to 10 years to copy. Primarily, we look at companies that have revenue already, so these are not just ideas. They've had a business going back, I would say, at least 5 years. Usually the management has, I would say, 10 to 20 years experience in the field. However, we do also look at some early stage seed type investments for, I would say, under $500,000 US. But again, the technology itself has to be very, very strong, and it has to be extremely innovative.
So the name of the company is?
Kingyun Group.
Kingyun Group.
Yes. It's a Hong Kong registered company. There's an office in Hong Kong and Shenzhen, and then we have some other offices in other provinces of China. These offices focus mainly on fundraising.
I think a lot of people here are not very familiar with the idea of stages of investing. Like you mentioned seed funding, angel funding, and I think there's first round, second round, IPO, and that kind of stuff. Can you specify, tell us more about it?
Right. Okay, so there's, I would say that the first stage is, so you have startup, and then, for example, like last week we had gone to this presentation by 500 startups, and they can invest as little as $50,000. And usually this will be through an incubator. Incubation is, it's usually a group, I would say, of maybe 20 to 50 startup companies that work together, and they'll give them office space, they'll give them a lot of the resources they need to grow their business, and they'll give them a little bit of money to help grow their idea over 3 to 6 months. So this is probably the first stage. Then after someone's formed a company, then you would have some type of seed investment. This will usually range from $250,000 to $500,000. They might not have, at this point, they most likely will not have revenue, but they should have a management team in place. Then after that, we would have venture capital. And these companies will always, I would say, have revenue, but they might not yet be profitable. Right? So again, this is the stage that we would focus on, where the companies has revenue going back at least a year or two, and they should be profitable in 1 to 2 years. Then once the company becomes profitable and they have a strong product, a strong management, they have a position in the market, then you get into private equity. And private equity is the main focus. In each of these spaces, usually the preferred exit is going to be either an IPO or a secondary sale. Our company, the preferred method is through an IPO on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, because the valuation, right, so the price that you can get for the company when you sell it is very high compared to what a sale to another company might be. And I think a lot of the VCs, this is also the preferred exit strategy. what we call it. However, sometimes this can be difficult. There's a lot of requirements involved, and oftentimes I would think about 70% of companies will just end up selling to another company. Right, so every investor, there's always the most important thing when you're thinking about starting a company is what is your exit strategy, right? How is the investor going to get their money out? So when they give you, $1 million, they're not usually looking to, hold on to this for 20 years. The exit is usually going to be in maybe 5 years is the maximum for us. Some companies can go up to 10 years. But whenever you're forming a company, right, when you're talking to investors, this is going to be the number one question. I would say, how are you going to get the money out? What is our profit going to be?
Okay, so you're basically investing in non-Chinese companies.
Okay, so my focus is for the non-Chinese, my team. There's about 5 people on my team, and we're focusing on the developed markets, but the large majority of our company is also focused on the Chinese market. This is going to be in other things besides high technology, a lot of commoditized products. For example, agriculture, mining is a good industry for us. One of the reasons for these investments is they're very safe. For example, agriculture, right? So you always have a very steady stream of income coming into the company. The amount of cash the company generates is very reliable. Whereas in high technology, there can be a lot of fluctuations. For example, if another technology comes around, then you could have nothing, right? Because the other technology might take you over. But a large majority of the Chinese investments, we don't do what's called taking technology risk. For example, a lot of startup companies, this is a risk because the technology is so new. I mean, of course, there's a huge upside, and then there's also, if the technology fails, there's a huge downside. So for the Chinese side, we would do a lot of these more stable investments. However, in China, we're also looking at very innovative products. But I would say that generally, right now in the Chinese market, we have not seen as many developed technologies as we have abroad.
So the technology is core that you're looking at when you decided to invest in it.
Right, depending on the product, right? So if the company has steady cash flows and they're in a reliable industry, then I wouldn't say the technology is as important. It's going to be more of like the business model and some of the aspects. But then when we're getting into the technology, it's going to be the core technology. How strong is it? How hard is it to copy? What's the position? What's the possible market? So that's another thing I should mention. Whenever you're forming a business, you have to think about the market. Right? If there's no market, no one's going to buy your product, so then it doesn't matter. I mean, you could have the best idea in the world, but if there's no market there and no one's actually going to buy it, then it's worthless, right? So, you can't just think about, oh, I have this wonderful idea, and I think it's great. I guess that's fine, but when you're actually doing it, you need to make market projections, right? So you would say, like this, I'm going to get maybe 10 million from this age group and 10 million from this demographic, and then you should know exactly how you're going to get the money, where's it going to come from, where's the cash going to come from.
Wait, this is kind of weird for me. So you stay in China and you invest in other countries.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty new strategy for Chinese private equity funds. So this is opening up in the past few years due to the Chinese government's new, they call it the Going Global Plan. So there's a few industries that the Chinese government has opened up to foreign investment. This is going to be, there's agriculture, there's medical devices, medicine is one of them, renewable energy. There's a few new types of investment that the Chinese government has allowed investment. So, for example, whenever you're making investment cross-border, so I have my money in renminbi and I need to change it into US dollars, right? So normally for a normal day-to-day life, it's very easy. You just go to the bank. But when you're changing like tens of millions of dollars, you need to have government approval. This is a really complicated process, and for a long time, this is not allowed. Just recently, through the last 5-year plan, and I think through the previous one also, a lot of these rules have been being more and more relaxed. So this business model is becoming more strong in China. Another thing, right, is that the Chinese people have the highest savings rate in the world, so there's a huge amount of capital that's just sitting there, which has given rise to, maybe you guys have heard of shadow banking, right? So a lot of people are trying to get their money out of China and trying to make new investments, and now that the government is relaxing these rules, so this type of investment strategy is becoming more common.
So basically, you're helping people here in China who want to put their money elsewhere than real estate to technology or other companies in other countries.
Sure.
How has it been working out so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's been going pretty good. So it's as I said, it's a really new business model. So there haven't been too many major successes in this business so far. I would say the biggest successes we've had has been on the Chinese side. Right, we have not actually made a huge investment into a foreign company yet, but of course we're confident that we can. I don't think there's too many Chinese companies that have. The only investments that have been made, I would say, so far is when the company has a technology in another country, and then what they would do is they would bring it to the Chinese market. So what we would do is we'd make an investment, say, for about $5 to $10 million, and the company would have a very strong management team, say, in America, and a very strong product, but the product might not yet be in China. So then we would help that company set up a joint venture into the Chinese market and help them build the Chinese market from a very, we call it a very high level. So for example, we wouldn't be managing the day-to-day operations of the company, but we would be making some very strategic, high-level decisions and helping them along in this way.
Okay, so I think having been in this business for a while, you must have seen some interesting cases and companies. Can you tell us some of those things?
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so last week, so my job, but what I usually would do is I have relationships with a lot of investment banks and private equity and venture capital companies around the world. So every week, these companies will send me, I would say, maybe about 20 businesses. And I'll look at the businesses, and if I think that it's good and it meets our criteria, our investment criteria, so then I would talk to the banker, and they would set up a call for me with the CEO of this company, and I would talk to them and learn about their business model and try to get more background on the company. Like for example, a lot of people will tell you now to make a business plan, like a 50-page business plan. You don't need a business plan. The most important thing is to have an executive summary. So I have 3 pages, a really good executive summary, and then the VC is just going to want to talk to you and learn a lot about your business. Having a business plan is good for yourself, but it's not really what a VC cares about. They care more about talking with you and understanding if you have a good business model, right? Like usually I can talk to, I say, a person after all this time. Usually about after 20 minutes, I can get a pretty good grasp on whether they, they understand their industry. Okay, so for example, okay, so last week I seen a company. So this company has a very interesting technology. They like for example, when someone's looking to do mining or oil and gas, they do surveys. So this involves a lot of going on foot and looking at the land, like digging holes and trying to learn, what's down there. If there's oil there, there's gold or something. So this company, they have a new type of technology, which was in the past there's been a monopoly by a company called Lockheed Martin for this technology, and because Lockheed Martin is a defense contractor, they work in the military in America. This technology has not been able to come to the Chinese market because of those restrictions. So recently, in the past 2 years, this company is a Canadian company, and they've developed a very similar technology to what Lockheed Martin is doing. This technology is a plane. It goes into a plane, and it can fly over any type of area, and then it will. How does it work? It works similar to how you would scan like another planet. They call it gravity gradiometry, which is basically they're measuring like the very, very small gaps between 2 objects using like the gravitational space or something. Anyway, so what they're doing is that they fly over the area and they can see what's down there, right? They can see if there's gold, they can see if there's oil, which obviously is much more efficient than going on foot and looking at all these different places. So this is a very interesting case. Also, the reason that this company is so good is because of their business model. So, say this company is doing a survey for their flyover for an oil company. They have a deal with this oil company. However, when they're flying over, say they might also discover gold, or they might discover water or other types of deposits. The oil company that contracted with them, they own the rights to the oil. However, this company now owns the rights to all the other minerals. So you can imagine that as they're flying over, they might discover a lot of other very interesting materials that have been buried underground there, and then they can actually sell this to other companies, right? So this can obviously be a huge business, and this company has 70% margins. Right? So these are huge margins, and this is primarily based on the business model and the relationship they have with their customers. So just besides the technology, right then and there, we also have a very strong business model. The management has been in the industry for 30 years. The CEO, I think, has started about 3 different similar companies. Right? So he's a serial entrepreneur. He has 30 years of experience. They have a very strong business model. They have very strong technology. They have an understanding of the Chinese market. The product is not in China. Right? So these are the criteria that we look for.
This kind of stuff is way over my head, believe it or not. I like to work on small things, bootstrap financing, very rarely take money from somebody because I don't like people telling me what to do. So this is completely different. You guys like to give money and then tell the company what to do. So you can get your exit and take the money back, right?
So that's actually an interesting point. So whenever you sign with a VC or any type of company, there are going to be things that they want you to do, right? And this is one of the big problems with going with the VCs. They're going to make pretty big requirements, and they're going to take a big piece of your company. So you have to be very careful when you're working with a venture capital, with a VC, and to figure out like what are their, how are they going to help you and how are they going to hurt you. So for us, our sales pitch, or what's it called? Our value proposition, right, is we don't want to make a big change to the company. All we want to do is help them on the Chinese side of the investment. So I think this value proposition is pretty good compared to other VCs. But a lot of the times when you do see a VC, they can make huge changes. Like you said, you have to exit in 5 years, right? Well, what if you don't want to exit in 5 years? What if you don't want to do an IPO? What if you think it's better to be a private company? Well, that's too bad. If you want to go with their criteria, you don't have a choice.
I think I've heard a similar story, tragedy that we see involved. So our whole company's crushed. You know Ju Guo? Nino Valley?
Yeah.
He's the boss of Nino Valley. He worked as a CEO for Huawei's internet department for a while. Before that, he was in America, and he founded a company. It's doing basically IP softwares for Chinese and America. So he went public in America, and he got a VC in it. Then they start batting to each other. So basically, the VC want him to reach a kind of goal, like 5 million profit a year. If he don't reach that goal, he lose parts of his share. So this thing goes on for like 3 years until he lost control.
I have a little story about something related to my business. The company that ended up being the #1 affiliate marketing company in the country, in the U.S. And they took some venture capital, and immediately things started to change. What happened is their key programmer was fired because he couldn't get to work on time. The VC people said, he doesn't sit at his desk at 9 o'clock, he's fired. Anyway, what happened is I contacted the 2 founders, and I found out this guy, he's a brilliant guy when it comes to programming, and I invited him to come to Bangkok to work at my company after I got the permission of the 2 founders. And what they told me is they didn't want to fire him, but the VC people told him, you got to fire him. Anyway, from that point, the company went downhill, and my company went uphill, because I had a really brilliant guy who, lived on Mountain Dew and coffee and worked all kinds of weird hours, but he did an incredible job for me. And the software that he built literally made my company. So I've seen a lot of those kind of stories, not to knock VC, because sometimes you need the money, but if you take it, be aware of the risks.
I think one thing definitely worth mentioning is that I've become very interested in recently is crowdfunding. If any of you have heard of Kickstarter or Indiegogo or any of these other crowdfunding sites, I think that if you, like I said, so what we're looking at is businesses and these strong, having revenue and a lot of these things. But if you have like a really great idea, like a really good product, like just a brilliant idea, I think this is definitely a good first step. And I think you can get a lot of traction there. And then the other thing, right, is the further along you are in your business and the further along you are in your idea, the less influence that a VC can have. Right, so the more valuable your company is already, the less that we can do, I guess, to potentially harm your company. So I think using crowdfunding and these types of sites can definitely make you, get a much better shot. And then, of course, right, if you use like Kickstarter, no one's taking a piece of your company. They're not taking it.
Explain to the crowd what you're working on.
Yeah. Okay. So crowdfunding is a website. There's a few different types. There's the first type I would say is the product crowdfunding, where you have an idea for any product. Like there was like a skateboard, I think it was, and it has like electric wheels. So this company, they just had this idea and they have a prototype, and they put it on the crowdfunding site. Now they haven't actually mass produced it; they've only had a few prototypes. But people give them money, and they give them a long lead time. Like for example, I would give you, say, I think it was like $1,000 to buy the skateboard. But everyone knows it's only an idea and they're not making it now. So they have about 6 months to actually put it into production. So it's almost like you're getting the money to buy your product without actually having a product. So, and then no one's taking a piece of your company, no one's taking anything. They're just giving you money to go out and make your product.
And you may or may not make the product.
Yeah. So actually, there's a lot of, I think there's fraud going on, but I'm not really sure. So yeah, so this is the product one, and then there's also other crowdfunding sites, but they operate more for investors, and they operate similar to a VC, where you would actually, the people would give you money and they would take a piece of your company. And then they would usually want to get some kind of return, like 10% a year. But I think even in that case, they're not going to make huge changes to your company. So I think it's definitely a preferred method towards working with a VC, in my opinion.
Kickstarter and Indiegogo is going great, but the second one you mentioned, like people who invest instead of buying, crowdfunding sites, I don't think
Many
there's
legal
any.
hurdles.
Yeah, I don't think there's any success cases.
Yeah, they're not. I know in China they've had a few like success cases, but it's not quite as big yet as I think it will be. But it's still interesting because you can still kind of put your idea out there, without having to go through like the channels that the VC, how VCs work. Right? You can get a lot more exposure.
Angelist.com.
Yeah,
Angelist is similar. It's similar, but people don't invest directly. Right? You just get ideas and like form an album.
And then there's sites like AngelList where you can just kind of put your idea on there and then you get exposure. And like a lot of VCs will use AngelList. Like I use it all the time. I look on there and look at companies. It's just like a site with like a lot of companies. Like I mentioned before, right? So I talk to a lot of bankers and these other PE funds around the world. They email me ideas and stuff, but it's kind of like a complicated process. So if you can just put your idea on a website and then everyone can look at it, this is obviously much more, more people can see it.
Okay. So before you get into PE, what was you doing?
Okay, so previous to this, I worked at Merrill Lynch in America for a year. That's a very large investment bank. And then before that, I worked in commodities trading in China for about 2 years.
Commodity trading. Can you tell us a little bit about?
Sure. Okay. So when I worked, it was physical commodities trading. So it was pretty simple. It was basically like, we do what you call location arbitrage, I guess, which is basically like you're buying something. The price here is, that's what a lot of people in China do. You're buying it in China, it costs $10, and you're selling it in America for $11, and you do like lots of these transactions every week. It's pretty simple. So I had done this in scrap and refined metals. So it's like scrap material, like aluminum, copper, these types of metals, and we would move it between countries.
So let's go back to PE. Right now, for your company, most of the shareholders are Chinese.
That's right.
They move their money from China mainland to Hong Kong to put in the fund.
That's right. Yeah.
How is that usually done?
Shopping
I
bag.
have no idea.
Yeah, because this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem here because Chinese people, we cannot find any other legit place to put their money rather than real estate.
Well, I had 2 properties in Hong Kong, and both of them were
That's
sold
very
to Chinese, and they arrived with the money in a box or a shopping bag. It's unbelievable.
I don't know. I've never seen the money, so I don't care. I just know it's there. So that's not my problem.
Okay, so right now the countries you're looking at mostly developed countries, Canada.
Right, so it's like I said, so there's 2 strategies. There's like, the international team, we focus on developed countries, and then the majority we're looking at Chinese companies. So there's two things there. It's pretty divided.
So are you familiar with the environment of the Chinese PE companies?
A little bit. Not as much as I should be, probably.
I think bureaus, including IDG, heard of them? University of Tencent, first one.
Yeah, I know.
Redwood, sometime.
I don't know very much about the Chinese PE. I should know a lot more. I know more about the foreign PE companies, I would say. I know CITIC has a pretty good portfolio.
In China?
CITIC? Yeah, CITIC's a Chinese company.
I think Tiger is doing good here.
Tiger.
And SoftBank.
Yeah.
They're,
I talked to, I honestly don't know much about it.
So if you're trying to using a Hong Kong company to invest in China, you do it through VIE, right?
No, we have subsidiaries, so we have the Hong Kong company as the parent company, and then we have subsidiaries in China. So the investment in China will go straight through the Chinese subsidiaries, and then the overseas investment goes through the Hong Kong parent company. A lot of private equity companies I think are set up like this.
Okay, so for your Chinese branch, the money is actually here in China.
That's
so
right.
it's not contract in China.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Because I read a lot of stories basically with the Vietnamese thing. Basically, if you are a foreign company or Hong Kong company and you want to invest in China, you cannot do it directly, right? You sign a contract with this company and say that I give you some money and I get the right to get all your profit or something. But there has been cases that a lot of companies, when they grow to a certain amount, they tend to ignore the contract, so investors don't get as much as they're supposed to.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So this kind of thing don't exist in other countries, right?
Yeah, no, it's not as bad. Like the contract law, I would say abroad is much stronger. But then, right, when you bring it into China, you got to think about this and how is the business model gonna? Like I mentioned before, if someone has a patent in America, that's great. But how is that gonna help us? Does the company really some piece of shit?
Maybe the patent here in China too, using it.
Yeah, you can, but it's still like it's not as strongly enforced, I guess you could say, as we would like. So but beyond the patent coverage, there's other criteria.
So if you have a patent in America and people are copying it in Europe, that would be a problem for this company, if the company is in Europe. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Anyone have any questions? You can ask to John or Paul.
Which area do you specialize to do PE? Yes, thank you. Here are some very simple questions about which do you have some area, industries to focus on to accelerate this complex? And how did you gather profits? This is the second question. Thank you.
So the industries, it's like I mentioned, so it's going to be, in China it's going to be commoditized products. So commoditized means that, commoditized means like there's so many players involved and the product has become like so normal that almost all the products look the same, right? Like for, like gold is a commodity, like gold is gold, that's basically all it is. Then you have like agriculture, like if you're selling apples or something, basically there's no difference between them. So these are commodities. This is the type of thing we invest in a lot in the Chinese market because it's stable, it's a very stable income. And then also the high technology that I had mentioned. So it's going to be devices. Like I had mentioned that the plane, the flight, it's a machine that goes inside the plane, right, to scan the oil. This is like a machine. This is an actual machine. That also has very high technology. So this is another focus. And then medical devices is another type of machine that has a high technology. So you can imagine like machines that have high technology. This is kind of like the focus. It's the best way to explain it. And then, so how you get money out is we buy the company, we would give them, say, 5 million to 10 million, somewhere here, or maybe a smaller company, right, 1 million. And then you would hold on to this, I would say, for maybe 2 to 4 years, maybe up to 5 years, and then you would sell it, right? So you're going to take your piece of the company and you'll sell it to a big company, or you'll do an IPO. That's how you get the money out. So, yes?
Have you did some IPOs or?
Yeah. So for the Chinese companies, we've done an IPO on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, but we haven't done any exits with the foreign companies.
I'm wondering if anybody has any small ideas that they'd like to have validated or talk about. This is an important thing, but you have to get to that level before you can get private equity. So, okay.
Hello, my name is Mike Littleton. A little bit of history first, because that will help get to the answer, I think. I arrived in China in 1997. It's 2013. I've worked in a couple of different positions, and the position I currently hold, I've held for 7 years. But my business actually has little to do with the work that I'm doing now. And the business idea is exactly that. It's a small, medium enterprise. I'm very fortunate because I'm a foreigner who's married in China with a family in China, and recently Shenzhen relaxed some of the provisions associated with starting a company. So any venture that I do, I'll be setting the business up as a Chinese company. Business and professional services is a very broad and general area, and for me, I'm considering different services as boxes, things that I can perform here. So my question is, in relation to the market as you understand it, do you see much, or have you heard of much interest in this kind of area for startup businesses in Shenzhen?
When you say business services, what exactly are you talking about? What type of service?
Okay, so there's event management planning, event planning. At the same time, there is some ability there to perform supplier audits, and at the same time, mentoring and coaching. So what I'm looking at is starting a small enterprise here that really is growing with the new growth businesses within Shenzhen, because I think Shenzhen is quite a vital area, and there are many, many young entrepreneurs here who are looking to get a good start on their business. So my mentoring, coaching side would be more of a companion service in exchange of ideas. I think there's a great opportunity for that. At the same time, 我也是有一点会说中文，so I can speak Chinese a little bit, and I want to speak Chinese a little bit after being here for 16 years. So that helps me to communicate with what I believe is my primary prospects, which are young entrepreneurs here looking to grow their businesses.
Yeah, I think you probably have something, a good idea, but you got to make sure that your target customers have some money to spend. A lot of people that are starting out don't have a whole lot of money for consulting services and things like that. So that would be my only concern. But I think there's a need for it for sure.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Mr. Joe, and I was the first so I can know exactly the background that you says here. But actually, two simple questions. One is, for example, how are you going to find a partner as like very young, like entrepreneurs or other small for those small companies? How those people can find very like good people with a very passion to go for a long time and a long way. This is, I mean, how can you make a judgment before you dump the money into that company?
Well, I think it's very difficult to find good people. And I look back at all.
Not only how long, I mean, sorry.
How long?
Yeah, how long then you can make a like general idea that okay, this team's kind of good or not or something.
I think there's no time frame. It's a matter of finding the right people to make something work. And I'm going through that right now in China. I've had a lot of disappointments with people, but I don't give up. I keep trying over and over again. But in the past, all my big successes have been because of a few key people that I hired and I put a team together that worked really well. And like before, I just mentioned the guy that I got from Canada to go to Bangkok. He was a brilliant guy, and he was the core of my business. When he got to Bangkok, I mean, it took several years to develop it, but without that guy, I wouldn't have had the success that I had. So it takes time, and I can't say there's any specific time frame. You just got to find the right people.
Okay, and the second simple question is, I don't know whether you have been in Guangzhou. I mean, did you go there?
I've been there, yeah.
Okay,
As a matter of fact, I'm doing some clothing business there.
Okay, great. So, comparing two cities, which one do you prefer to have your
I
business?
prefer Shenzhen over many cities that I've been to. It's the most entrepreneurial place that I've ever been to, including in the U.S. Although I haven't spent time in Silicon Valley, but when I came to Shenzhen, I first came in 2000, and I thought it was a terrible place because it was just construction cranes and bicycles and dirt. And I couldn't believe, what are they building all this for, because there's no people here. And then I came back in 2009 and I went to Watchung Bay, and that totally changed my attitude. And there's so many entrepreneurs there, and I thought, wow, there's so much opportunity here. I got to move here and figure out what's going on and how I can make some business happen. And I've done that, and I've also helped quite a few Chinese entrepreneurs have success. Since I've been in China, more of the Chinese entrepreneurs that I've helped have had big success than myself. But I'm working on some big things too. And it's just a matter of putting the right team together and understanding, there's so many obstacles that you come, as a foreigner, I face many obstacles, but I don't give up, and I believe that I'm putting together a really good shipping platform, and that I'm putting that together actually for my advertising business, because I want to give away free products and charge for the shipping. But the whole process is to build a mailing list that I can communicate with people through email, through mobile marketing, text messages, all kinds of things, but all over the world. So that's my current project that I'm working on. I don't know if I answered your question.
Why so difficult in Guangzhou? I mean, for you are the.
Well, I think the people's attitudes in Guangzhou are not the same as in Shenzhen. I feel like when people come here, they come here to make some money or to make something happen, change their life. In Guangzhou, I don't get the same feeling from the people. And I feel people here are a lot more friendly too, even comparing, say, to Hong Kong, and also to Guangzhou. Maybe I didn't spend enough time there, but my gut reaction to Shenzhen is so many entrepreneurs here and so many people trying to do new and different things. Thanks. Could you talk a little bit about your, you mentioned your crowdfunding in China?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that site and how it works?
Now, what else is there to
Or
say?
is it too soon? Well, maybe you can share it with the people here.
Yeah, it's like I was saying. It's just like a crowdfunding site is like I have an idea for a product. Like say I have an idea for a new phone. Like right now, actually going on is the largest crowdfunding ever for a. It's a phone that uses Linux, right? And they're trying to raise 20 million, this is not common. Usually, people will be looking to raise, I think, about 5,000 is the average. So yes, okay. So say I have an idea for like a case, like a really cool case for your sunglasses. But all I have is an idea and a prototype. I don't have a factory to make it. I don't have the money to make it. All I have is the idea. So I take the idea and I tell them about my team and I put it onto the website, and people can go on the website and they can buy it, right? And then they know that you're not producing it, so they have to wait, like say 6 months to get it.
But your market is, you're targeting the Chinese market?
For crowdfunding?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what we're making?
The one that you're making.
Okay, so the crowdfunding site that we're making is a little different. So my company is also making a crowdfunding site right now, but it's a different type of crowdfunding. This is the third one I'd say that I didn't really mention. So this is going to be so like say that you need money to buy a car. You're a worker, and every day you drive your car to work, but then your car broke, and you're in trouble now, right? You don't have a way to get to work, but you can't get money from the bank. So what the crowdfunding site is, you put your problem basically on the website. You say I need $5,000 to get a car so I can go to work, and I'm going to pay you a pretty high interest, like 20% a year. So give me the money. And now instead of going to the bank, right? You go to the bank gives you $5,000. It doesn't work like that. You put what you're trying to do on the internet, and anyone in the world basically can go on the site and give you money. So one person can give $100, one person can give $1,000, one person can give $10, whatever you want to give them. But you're still getting that interest, right? You're still getting 20%. So after the person raised the full $5,000, right, they get the money, and then they have usually, I'd say, about 3 months to pay the money back with interest. So say they would pay it back, in 3 months with 20% a year, so that would be about 5% interest. That's it. That's how it works.
I think you'll have a tough time.
Does that make sense?
It's like Prosper.com, are you familiar with them? But 3 months is not long enough to get paid back. You won't get paid back.
Depends. I don't know. I personally feel that crowdfunding is a much better way to figure out what needs to get paid, and I think it works a lot better than banks, because think about you have a bank, I mean, how many people, like, I'm like at a VC, right, so I have me, I look at the product, and maybe like I have 2 other people on my team look at it, and then maybe you have 10 people looking at this. When you do crowdfunding, you're having thousands of people look at your product, you know, so it's very efficient, so you're going to learn whether or not this is a good product or not. That's why a lot of the crowdfunding sites, like the people that put their ideas, it's not only are they getting money, but they're finding out if it's a really good idea. I mean, if people are giving you money to buy your idea, it's got to be a good product. So I think after they get the money to, you know, to make whatever they're going to make, then after that, then they can even make more of it.
Well, I do, but I disagree with you. It's called peer-to-peer lending.
Yeah,
It's been done in America and in Prosper.
Yeah.
A lot of people lost a lot of money.
Yeah, but it's I think you know, it's just in the early stages. I mean, we'll see what happens, but it, you know, I don't know. I think it's.
But it's targeted at the Chinese market.
Ours, yeah, it's for Chinese.
So you're going to take money from Chinese and lending to Chinese? Or?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, maybe some Chinese can comment on whether or not that makes sense.
It's like you have to think about it. Like you have to look at the person. Like who's the person? Do they have a good record? You know, can they pay the money back? I mean, you have all these different people, and I believe that people are pretty smart and that they'll figure it out and they'll make good investments. You know, over time. And yeah, maybe at first. It's like anytime there's a new industry, at first it's going to have huge problems and it's going to be a failure. But over time, you know, the market will work out these problems, I think.
If you know the people, I mean, it makes sense if it's a small. Richard Branson had one also that did close down.
I have to agree to disagree.
Okay. Well, I'm interested to see how it goes.
I don't know, it'll be interesting. I think it's just really early, I think, in this industry to, you know, say whether or not it's going to work. I mean, it's only been around for a few years.
2006.
Yeah. So it's pretty new. We'll see.
Yeah, I was involved in the early stage of Prosper,
Okay.
but I don't want to talk about it.
There is actually a Chinese website doing the exact same thing. They've been doing it for 1 year. I think it's running okay right now. That's just now losing money
So, but it's for like personal loans, not for business funding, correct?
for personal loans and business.
Okay. Well, you know, I think the people here are probably more interested in the business funding aspect of it than
I agree at
need
first
money
when
to
people
buy a car.
people are fresh to this idea, people get excited, people lose a lot of money, they make poor judgment. But I say like 10 years, 20 years, people will get that.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah, I agree with that long term. I think it's a great idea. It's just that there's so many challenges along the way.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of legal challenges,
Yeah.
and in China, I can't even imagine what that would be like because you're going to be competing
There's
with
definitely,
the banks that are state-owned. So
Some people say now it's a bubble and there's going to be a crowdfunding bubble. And it's probably true. Usually what happens anytime there's a new technology, like in 2000, there's the internet bubble, right? There's a huge bubble, there's hundreds of these companies, the bubble burst, and now there's like a few good companies. I think this always happens. Like now with crowdfunding, I think there's like 2,000 of these sites in China or something, and it's going to be a huge big mess, and then it's going to collapse.
well, that's when they have the first successful one. Then fraud enters the picture, and
Yeah, I know, yeah.
you know, do some fraudulent things, and then there's going to be a big collapse.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen, yeah. There'll be a big, but then it will be successful eventually, because it's a good model.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think the Kickstarter model is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think this is also a good model. People would rather, after a few banks collapse, maybe they want to put their money into somebody's loan directly.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions?
About the crowdfunding thing, actually when I hear your idea, I thought it's more like the derivatives in the financial market. It's like you have some prospect, you promise something, you can get something else. But the problems I thought was about the risks. So in the financial markets, you have the third-party clearing house to protect both sides, investors and things like that. So will you work as, like, your website work as the third-party thing?
Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. So there's different models of this. There's some way where the website will do the due diligence, right? Do the checking and make sure everything checks out. But in my opinion, I believe that the best way to do it is just to put it on there and let the people decide, do the research and figure out whether or not this is a good idea. I believe that this is the most efficient method to do it. But yeah, right now I think most of the sites will do a lot of the due diligence themselves.
But you know, apart from the idea, I think there's some like moral side problems because I mean when one person's got an idea, get the money, they actually got the money from like 9 people. They can't actually control what he's doing afterward. So how do you think it's possible to like over?
Yeah, it's like, there's fraud, right? People do lie. People do lie, but you have to think about it. It's like, okay, like in the past, like a lot of the reason that we had this huge bubble in America and there was a huge collapse, everyone went to the bank and they trusted the bank. Like, oh, you're safe, everything's gonna be fine, don't worry about it. And everyone had this idea, or like in America we have FDIC insurance. So every time you put money into the bank, it's guaranteed by the government. You can't lose money. Right? There's no way to lose money because the government, up to 250, yeah. The government will guarantee it. So no one cares. No one cares. You put the money in any bank you want, it doesn't matter. But if that wasn't there, if you didn't have the FDIC insurance, if you didn't have these other protections, then I believe that people would check it and they would be much more careful about what they're doing with their money. And I think this is how, maybe crowdfunding will help to educate people about investing, and at the same time will be a really good way to, move money between investors and companies. But it's going to take time, and there's going to be a lot of problems, definitely. People are going to lose millions. So, that's only my opinion. So. Do you have an opinion on that?
I think time will tell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's going to take a long time to work itself out.
Alright, so let's give some applause to Joe. This is amazing, like last minute, listen to you.
Reschedule those guys?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So next month we're gonna have Laurent here. Laurent is a guy who's selling cell phones in South America. He's selling a lot. I think he's number 1 or something. So next month he's going to be 20-ish. We'll let you know. Another good news I want to share is Scott Bryant just get officially partnered up with the Google for Adventures. So we're going to have someone coming to Scott Bryant from Google maybe sometime soon. So you guys can, keep track by scanning the QR code right over there on the door or leave us your name card. We'll keep you in your list. Thank you guys.
We have these copies brought from design. It's